What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope that you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
In this episode, we talk with Trevor Todd, a third grade teacher from Wilmington, North Carolina, about why teaching with your hair on fire, but also having a fire extinguisher, is what the world needs now. Without any further ado, Trevor Todd.
Trevor, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. For our listeners that don't have the privilege of knowing who you are, could you tell us who are you, where are you from, and what's your role in education?
Yeah. So my name is Trevor Todd. I currently live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I am currently a third grade teacher in a general ed classroom at a local elementary school.
Very cool. Trevor, how long have you been teaching, and what is the spectrum of your experience?
So I've been teaching, this is year 6 for me. So I'm relatively a new teacher. And I have had experience in mainly second and third grade. I've dabbled in a little bit into some upper grades, but mainly in second and third grade.
Trevor, I love that you said you're fairly a new teacher. That makes me feel pretty good. I had a student today when we were doing our morning meeting tell me that once you hit 35, you become old and fragile. And I was like, bro, how old do you think I am? And he goes, well, you're 33. I know that. So you've got about 2 years left. And I kind of crumbled there in that moment. So you're reboosting me here.
Yeah. My class thinks that I'm in my 50s, and I'm like, whoa, no, no.
Trevor, you don't look a day over 25.
Oh, I appreciate it.
It's crazy how the way kids look at time, right? And I bet third grade's got a totally different perspective on it. But we'll talk about like a radio or something, and they get it from the car, but they don't understand like a transistor radio. Be like, what are you talking about? They think everything is so old.
All right.
Oh, well, Trevor, hey, I'm curious. Third grade, and then we got Tom in fourth grade, me in fifth. Like, what got you into elementary education? Because there's not a lot of guys in there.
No, not a lot at all. I remember so vividly, like in my college experiences, like there was only, I think, 2 other guys in all of my cohorts. I was like, what am I doing? I just really had a passion for like the younger generation. And to be super honest, like I knew that I did not have patience for the hormonal middle schoolers and the drama high schoolers. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be working with the sweet little elementary kids. So I think that's what drew me there. Is I knew that I had a heart to work with the next generation of people, but I didn't have the patience to do middle or high school.
Trevor, I identify 100% with that, right? Like there are some days where I roll in and the biggest problem that I have to deal with is I have day old water in my water bottle. Can I go refill my day old water? And if that's
Right.
the biggest problem in my world and your world, we're in great shape.
We're doing great.
Yeah, right. I really admire you for jumping in and being an elementary teacher. One thing we talk about sometimes on here is new teachers, maybe teaching in the pandemic is all they know. And you've seen it like on both sides of it, right? So you were new as we came into this pandemic. Now we're it's crazy to think 2 years in, and you've seen it kind of swing, I'm sure, both ways in North Carolina. What would you, first of all, how did you stay inspired? How did you stay in education? What kept you going? And second of all, what would you say to educators who are coming into the field and all they know is pandemic teaching, or they're thinking about, there's a teacher shortage, they're in college right now to be educators, and they're thinking, yeah, this pandemic stuff is crazy. What would you say to get them more excited and pumped to be teachers?
Yeah. So for me, I just, to keep me inspired through it, because it was super hard, and I'm sure that you both understand, like when we went out March of 2020, we were thrown into this like whole new world that no one knew what to do. I mean, colleges had done it, but college in third grade is way different So I would get like calls from professors and be like, just try this. And I'm like, they can't do that. And at the time I was teaching second grade, so I feel like it was even more of a challenge. But for me, I kind of just kept my eye on, why am I doing this? What is the purpose? I'm here to provide these children with a quality education that they're going to be able to take with them beyond this. And it doesn't matter if they're in front of me in person or if we're looking at each other through a screen. I can be just as effective through a screen as I could in person. That's what I kept telling myself. I'm like, I don't have to be in the room. I don't have to be present with them to be an effective educator. I can do this online. I think just self-motivation, and then just finding your tribe of people, like finding the colleagues around you that can come beside you and be like, hey, you're doing an awesome job. And then you can turn around and be an encouragement to them as well. And so that's what really got me through, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. Like I said, I was teaching second grade. I was teaching with a bunch of ladies that had been in education for quite a while. And they were like, whoa, I have no idea. They were even more clueless than I feel like what I was, and I was able to be a support for them, and they were able to be a support for me. And for me, that was just so important to have that group of people, that strong knit group of people that are there to support you and to encourage you to keep on going. And that's exactly what I would say to a new teacher coming into the profession. Like, find those people ASAP. No matter if we're in a pandemic, if we're not in a pandemic, find those people that are going to be your people, that are going to come up beside you and going to encourage you. So
I think that's a part that everybody needs to hear, right? Like, you have to have a group of people if you're going to be successful in education. Sometimes, and maybe it was just me, but when I entered my first classroom, I was like, well, I can't go ask questions because then they're going to think that I'm not qualified, and I can't go ask them because then this other kid's going to hear and he's not going to think I'm a good teacher or something. Sometimes it's important to understand, like, hey, in this field, you don't know everything. Put your pride to the side and ask for help when you need it, and get around those people that are going to support you and love you through those hard times, right?
I had such a unique experience my first year teaching. My mentor was actually my fourth grade teacher from when I was in school. And so I felt like I could go to her with anything, because I was like, you saw me in one of the most vulnerable stages of my life as a 10-year-old. So now I can go to you with any question and feel safe.
Tom, I feel like we're getting a lot of people that are getting old teachers and now they're working with them. I was the same way. I work with my fourth grade teacher now. He's my teammate. So now I'm going to go off track. And I'm like, what's that like for you? Like to be, like you're probably their friend now. Like, it's a different dynamic. So I got to know what it's like.
It's a very different dynamic. And this person has since moved on to another building. So I'm no longer working in direct contact with her every day. But we're still, I mean, like, she called me last week to see how I was doing. It's weird because for the longest time I was calling her Mrs. and then her name. And she was like, you don't have to call me that anymore. Like, you can call me by my first name. And I just could never get over that. I was like, no, like, you're still going to be Mrs. Linkner forever.
Well,
but it's so cool though, because it's so full circle for me though. It's so cool.
And I think what you said about, like, she called you last week to check in on you, right? Like, that's the love of a teacher. You're a grown adult, but I'm still going to love you because I've watched you grown and I've watched you thrive. I'm watching you thrive right now, and I'm going to love every minute of that, right? Like, that's the goal of a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor, I want to change gears a little bit too. You have a sharp looking bow tie on. And before we got on and recorded, you said I wear a bow tie every day. And there's kind of a cool connection, like, to your bow ties. And I think, like, as educators, we need to be who we are and share our stories with our students, with the school we're in, the larger community. Would you share your story about your bow ties? It's really cool.
Yeah, I will. I'm actually really proud of them. Every time I wear one, people are like, oh, that's so cool. And I was like, oh, wait, but let me tell you the story, because the story is even cooler than the tie. My sweet, sweet, sweet grandmother makes every single tie that I wear. So she will either go out and find the material, or I'll be somewhere and be like, "Ooh, that's a really cool one. Like, I need that to be a tie." And I'll bring it to her, and she'll sew it for me, and I get to wear a different tie every day. I have 250 different patterns.
Wow.
There are patterns for every holiday of the year, every month of the year. They all have different themes. And a really cool thing that I do at the end of the year is, because I wear a bow tie every single day, my grandmother actually picks out a material for all of the children, and she makes everyone in my class a bow tie or either a hair bow as a little parting gift from Mr. Todd and her to remember us both by.
Holy cow.
That is
That's
so cool.
awesome. And what a memory too. Like once they graduate, hopefully they're wearing that when they graduate, and they're like, yeah, Mr. Todd gave me that. Mr. Todd's grandma actually made it for me though.
Right. Yeah. And she comes and she puts them on them, and it's just such a sweet time. And our local news has done a story on it, and it's just so fun. And I think people are like, how did you get into the bow tie? Like, what did that for you? I've just always been like a really formal dresser in general. And so when I started teaching, I was wearing a tie every day, but I would bend over and help them, and the tie would be in their paper. And I was like, this is not going to work. And so then I just was like, I can wear a bow tie and it won't be in the way.
That is so awesome. That is
Yeah.
so awesome. I love that story. And I love the fact that like you're bringing in the community, and like Josh said, it's going to be a huge, huge, huge memory as the kids move on. And what a memory for you and your grandmother. What a cool story. I love that you use the bow ties to create really intentional relationships with your students. What are some other ways that you do it? It's clear you're a relational teacher, and you're just it's just amazing. But how else do you cultivate relationships with your kids?
So that is, if I had to like sum up like what my job, other than providing education and providing like the material and the curriculum to them, what is my duty to them? And it is to be that person for them and build a relationship with them and know them on a deeper level than just someone that they see or a friend, or just really know them well. So I just really take the time to talk to them, to hear them. I think that that's important. I think a lot of times that as adults, we can be like, hey, how are you doing today? And then just turn the other cheek and keep walking and not actually hear what's actually on their mind. And so I make sure that every morning I ask every single one of them, how are you doing? How is your evening? And I like kneel down on the floor next to their desk, and I have a conversation with them, and I listen, and I share in their victories, and I have cried in sorrows with students. And I think that that's just so important for students to feel that you have a true heart and desire for them, and that you care about what they're saying, and that you're caring enough to listen to them. And as adults, I think that that can be hard sometimes, because we can see them as just little 8-year-olds, and 8-year-olds don't have big feelings or are not having a lot going on, but really getting down on their level, hearing what they have to say and hearing how they have to feel.
Trevor, I'm curious because, excuse me, I feel like sometimes in education, we get some pushback when we do things like that, because granted, I don't know how many students you have, but they'll be like, oh, how do you do that with every single student? Like, you have stuff to teach them. So what do you say to people that push back against that and say, you have a curriculum to follow? Like, why are you spending that time checking in with them? Because that time is valuable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say that, everything is priorities. And I believe in order for a student to be a successful learner and to learn the curriculum, that they need to be in a good headspace and feel comfortable with the person that's presenting that material to them. And for me, in order for them to feel that way, they need to see me more as a support person, as someone they can come and talk to about anything, more so than just an individual that's standing teaching about area and perimeter. For me, I would tell people like in the morning, that's when I do it when they come in first thing in the morning. Instead of sitting at my desk drinking a nice warm cup of coffee, I'll drink it a couple hours later, ice cold, just to have that time with them in the morning and hear what they've been through the night before.
That's a true teacher right there. When you're drinking ice cold coffee because the relationships come first, you know you're a teacher, right, Trevor? That's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. I'm curious, Trevor. I saw a post that you made on Twitter about teaching text features, and this was really, really intriguing. You added the theme of doing like a medical procedure with these text features. Explain a little bit about that, because I think novelty in the classroom is sometimes so necessary for building excitement amongst kids. And then if there's any other like innovative programs or curriculum or anything that really you think sets your practice apart, feel free to share some of that too.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was just breezing Instagram, and I came across the book by Ron Clark, The Wild Card. And so I read The Wild Card, and I was like immediately inspired to do these crazy things in my classroom. I was like, I'm going to take it to the next level. Okay. Like it's going to be insane. And that's where I really got to the idea of like, if I'm teaching text features, why not put them in a surgical cap and gloves and say that they're going to do an operation where they have to transplant the features from the magazine to the patient to save them, and then write a report to the patient about what they did and how that's going to help them become a better reader in the future. Like, why not do that? Like, so I just try to find moments in lessons and units that I can make different. Like we're in area right now and they all have little hard hats and they're designing their architects and they're designing their houses and their little rooms and they're moving pieces around. And so I think that it's like, let's think outside of the box here. Let's make it interesting for them and not so like dragging on. Another thing that I can also like really doing that, I can be like, one day you can be a doctor. One day you can be an architect. Like this could be the beginning for you. Like this is not an unreachable goal for any of you. And so with the doctor thing, they had so much fun. They were going around calling each other like by doctor and then their last name, and they just had so much fun. And all day they wore their little costumes around the building, and people were like, oh, tell me about why you're wearing that costume. And they were able to explain and own their learning and then explain what they had done. And that would have never happened if I would have not given them a surgical cap and a pair of blue latex gloves. It's all I did different. Like it's literally all I did.
That book, The Wild Card, that's a pretty great book. And they talk a lot about it in the book about room transformations, right? And I was sitting there listening to you and I was like, man, that dude does all of that. He does all that. But then you made it like, this is all I did for him, right? To transform their learning. And I think that that's another important thing for especially young teachers that have grown up with Instagram, looking at these pictures and being like, oh my goodness, I have to do all of this. Like telling them, if you just change little things throughout what you do, you can change the experience that a child has, right? So I love that you're doing that. And man, I kind of want to do it now too, because we're working on that in our class about like grabbing text evidence. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go to urgent care and be like, hey, can I just have some plastic gloves? Well, why do you need them? I'm doing something in my class. Don't worry about it. Just help me out a little bit.
Yeah, it's just such little things like that, and like little like when we do fractions, they do pizzas. I go to Domino's and I say, can I get some boxes? And they give me 18 boxes and they build a pizza, and it's just little teeny things that can make a huge impact and take your lesson to like the next level with very little effort.
Right? Like it is thinking outside of the box, but it's just asking, right? Like a lot of teachers wouldn't think like, well, I can't ask Domino's if I'm not going to order anything. But if you a lot of the times if you walk in and you're like, hey, I'm a teacher, this is what I'm doing, can you help me out? They'll be like, oh yeah, I got your back. Right? There's a lot of people
Hmm.
that come to battle for teachers if you got a good reason for what you're doing, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
We've got a lot of teachers that are coming into education. So they're going to enter the end of what we hope is the pandemic. What advice should we give them? Right? Like how do we tell them, hey, this job's hard, but it's worth it if
Hmm.
if this happens? Like what advice do we give them to stay inspired during the hard times?
Hmm. So I think two important things to remember with that. Um, you have to make time for yourself. And I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that I was in the building till 6 o'clock every night, first couple of years teaching, and I was just like, I cannot sustain this. Like, this is not healthy for me. I'm not spending time doing things that I enjoy anymore. Like the work has completely consumed me. So I think that it's a balance, a hard balance to figure out, but you have to find time to do things that you enjoy, to be outside of the building, to be outside of work, because we all know that the work does not end at the building. But like to shut the computer, turn on the TV, watch Grey's Anatomy, it's okay. The lessons will get planned. Like you can watch TV or go for a run. And then also just really keeping in the forefront of your mind the impact that you're having. I think for me, when I'm having a bad day or a hard day, I can look out and be like, man, the next president of the United States could be sitting in this room right now, and I'm going to be the one that has influenced them at this level. And so I feel like just keeping that in the forefront of our mind of like, whether we feel it right now or not, are having an impact on every child that we come in contact with.
Trevor, that's so insightful because it's really hard when you're standing with your students or you're sitting at a table with your students and um, test scores are being touted as very important and it's day in and it's day out. It's really hard to keep that in the forefront of our mind. So thank you for the reminder that we have to do that. We have to um, believe that we're as Arlinda Davis, one of our other National University Teacher Award winners, mentioned, that we're preparing students to inherit society, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really what we're doing, and we have to keep that
Mm-hmm.
at the forefront of our mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so so important.
And
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I liked too that you talked about like the importance of taking care of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tom and I were on an airplane on our way to Buffalo, and the flight attendant was like, in the case of emergency, remember to put on your own face mask before putting on. Like we got to remember that as teachers in a field where we are full of empathy for others, we got
Mm-hmm.
to remember to put our own mask on first.
And I was actually talking to a group of beginning teachers, and I mentioned that same analogy. I said we as teachers are always focused on putting the masks on everybody else and making sure their masks are on, and not literally now, not literally speaking their face masks, but like we're worried about making sure that they are well and they're set and they have what they need. But how can we do that for them if we're not doing that for ourselves?
and I think it goes too along with modeling the skills that we want our students to have, whether that's being
Mm-hmm.
socially and emotionally responsive to their needs. We ask kids to do that, right? Work with anybody, be kind to your fellow classmates, treat
Mm-hmm.
each other with respect. But if I'm tired, if I'm grouchy, if I'm crabby with an adult in my classroom, there's 52 little eyes because each kid has two, so 26. um right, like
Mm-hmm.
they watch, they pay attention, and they know that if Mr. Wiz is not on top of his game and he's being rude to somebody else, something's wrong, and I'm not doing a good job of setting that example. And I think that's really important too, that we realize like we are who they look up to, and they emulate what we do as adults.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's easy to remember, or not remember, it's easy to forget too. Like, it's okay to have those hard conversations with them.
Mm.
My my son was in the hospital on Thursday. I came in on Friday after being at the hospital until midnight, waking up at 5 o'clock to get my other two kids ready. I walked in and I just said, "Hey guys, I had a really long night. Here's what happened. If I'm grumpy today, I'm really sorry. I still love you. I'm just feeling scared." Like, it's okay, especially for us three, right? Especially for men, to model those feelings. Like, I'm scared, I'm sad, I've got feelings too. Because I think sometimes as men, those feelings for us are supposed to be pushed to the side, and we're supposed to walk around with our chest puffed out. It's important for us to remind those kids, hey, we've got those feelings.
It is. I think that's really important as male educators, especially on the elementary level, modeling that for male students too. We had a support staff member that passed away this year, and she was actually my TA the year before. And so when we found out, I was visibly, obviously emotional, and you know, some may be like, well, that was not very appropriate to do that in front of them. Like, you should have done that on your own time. But I so agree with what you're saying. Like, we need to show them that it's really okay to be upset and really okay to have a bad day. And we can get over that.
Yeah. I'm not going to throw a chair because I'm upset. I'm not going to flip a table. I'm not going to hit somebody next to me. They're big emotions that we have as adults. They're big emotions that 8, 9, 10, pre-K kids have. How do we handle that? And Trevor, what you're saying is absolutely right. Like, it needs to be modeled. Trevor, it's been so much fun talking and learning from you, and learning just about your style. I would love to be a student in your classroom, I think. I promise I would be on my best behavior.
If we're getting bow ties, like, I feel like I'm going to wear a bow tie tomorrow.
That you should.
I would be so confused though, because like, I walked in with sweatshirts and inspirational quotes and be like, "What are you doing?" I'd be like, "Hey, let me tell you about this guy. His name's Trevor Todd. He's absolutely inspirational." They'd be like, "What?"
I really appreciate it.
Sorry.
Trevor, we ask one more question
at
the end of every episode. And this is the big one. And sometimes we sing. Are you familiar with the song from the 60s, What the World Needs Now?
It was in Boss Baby a few years ago.
That's right.
If you haven't.
Usually we ask our guests to sing it.
Oh.
No. No, Josh.
I don't really do karaoke. But
well, Trevor, if you had to narrow it down and share with educators anything at all, what does the world need now?
Okay, it sounds like super cliche because I'm a teacher, but what the world needs now is educators that are on fire for their profession and want the very best for every student that they come in contact with.
I love that. Trevor, let me give you some pushback, because I was on Twitter, which is a platform that I usually don't go to. There's this book called Teach with Your Hair on Fire. And I saw somebody on Twitter reference it. And they're like, if we're going to ask teachers to teach with their hair on fire, I don't even want to be here. So Trevor, I feel like before we get off, we gotta clarify that for him, because we're not literally asking you to do everything for teaching, right? Like, when I read that tweet, I was just kind of like, oh, you're not my person, right? Like, we're not vibing. We gotta set the record straight for people that are on that line of, well, if I need to teach with my hair on fire, this isn't for me. So can you help us with that? Like, how do we help them understand what, like, I feel like the three of us, the people we've had on in the past, we're on the same line. If somebody says, let's teach like our hair's on fire, we got the same vibe going. How do we pull other people in with us?
I think it goes back to my point that I said earlier. It's just a balance. It's a balance of finding, I can be my 100% best self But then there's also some times that I have to know that like I need to take a little break. I need to do something for myself. I need to, like this October, I was having a hard time and I said, you know what? Forget it. I found an Airbnb in the mountains and I took the Friday off and I was like, adios. But then I came back Monday and I was rejuvenated, refreshed, and like ready to hit the ground running again. So I think that just understanding that, yes, we should be teaching like our hair's on fire, but we can blow the extinguisher on it a few times a year or when we need to calm down a little bit, because we know that when we come back on and light the match to our hair again, we'll be ready to go again.
Let's go.
That was amazing. Yes. Yes.
Oh
Oh,
man, those are the messages we have to get out, right? Like your hair in this field has to be on fire every day. That's not saying you can't tell your kids you're having a hard time. That's not saying you can't take a break when you need it. But when you're there, right? You're there
That's
fully.
right. That's right.
Trevor, thank you so much for your time. And Josh and I talk about how we love to interview passionate, energetic educators because we need you. We need tons of educators with their hair on fire. So thank you for your time. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much. Have a great night. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took your time to listen to our guest, Trevor Todd. Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives, and hopefully what the world needs now is helping you to sustain your inspiration as we journey through this school year together. If it is, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us to get inspirational educator stories out.
We hope that as you head out, you remember the biggest factor that plays into student success is you, your love, your empathy, your passion, your dedication. It's exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for everything you do. Have a good one.